Welcome back, everybody. Sorry for my absence from YouTube for a while, but I'm here to start a new series of videos called RPM's Quick Tips, and let's get started after the break. On this first episode of Quick Tips, we're going to be talking about how to properly space your axles and gears in your cars, the parts that are available to do this, and what end play and backlash mean and how they affect the performance of your car. Okay, so before I show you how to set up your axles, let's first get the discussion of end play and backlash out of the way. We'll start with end play because that's the easier one to illustrate. So as you can see, I have a few axles laid out here in a couple of cars, and we're going to illustrate what end play is. We'll take an axle with 0 spacers or condoms or gear bosses or anything like that on because it's just going to be easier to show you what I'm talking about. We'll grab this car for this one. Pop the gear in there. And since there's no spacers, you can see this side-to-side movement. That's called end play. You want to keep that to a minimum, especially with the Hyper Rev gears. I like to have it so that there's maybe 2 to 3 thou of end play in the car when everything is all set up. So to fix that, what we got to do is pop the axle back out, grab one of our spacers. This is a 20 thou spacer. We'll grab that to start with. Pop it on the axle, pop the axle back in the car, and check the end play again. There's still some, but obviously there's a lot less. Rotate the gear, about the same all the way around the gear. We'll keep going. I got my container of spacers right here. Gonna want probably another 3 thou to put in there. Pop the axle out. I like to keep the smaller spacers closest to the gear. That way when you're putting them on the car, the small ones don't catch up and bend and cause the axle to bind. So again, smaller spacer closest to the gear. 20 thou spacer back on there. Pop it back into the car. Check the end play. And there we go. You can see there's a little side-to-side movement. It's about 2 thou. That's pretty much exactly where I want it. Okay, continuing on with the end play discussion, we're gonna get our car back here, and I already pre-spaced another axle, but this one has a condom in it. And now what this does is it spaces the axle setup from both sides of the chassis. The spacers behind the gear and the condom on the other side of the chassis, so that both ends make contact with the car. There's a little bit of movement, but again, it's restricted on both ends. In theory, what this does is it keeps the pressure off of the motor shaft and it allows the motor to spin up faster, and you get quicker acceleration and deceleration and higher top speeds. An alternate way than using the axle condom to control end play is by using what are called axle stops. Now what these are little metal pieces that are either pressed on or soldered onto the axle right here, and it works the same way as the axle condom does in that it controls the end play on the non-gear side of the axle setup. You can get these from both Scale Engineering and Quicker Engineering on their websites. Now the final way of controlling end play is by using a double-sided gear boss. Now what that's going to do is it's going to allow the tip of the pinion right here to sit between both flanges of the gear boss, and that is what is going to control the side-to-side end play motion by riding on the tip of that pinion. Now that's a lot of force to apply to a very small piece of plastic, so it's also a good idea to still put a spacer over here to help with some of that. So when should you use each method? So in my opinion, you should never use just the axle spacer on one side by itself. It's the least effective way to space an axle, and you're going to get the least amount of performance and reliability out of your gears. What I use on most of my own personal setups in Superstock and CMPM is the axle condom setup. If you remember earlier, I said that keeps the pressure off of the motor shaft and allows your motors to spin up faster and brake faster and gives you more top speed. I firmly believe that, and that's the setup that I like to use. With that said, however, sometimes it's not enough to protect your pinion gear, and you have to use the double-sided gear boss. This method has been proven by Victor Feliciano and others to protect the pinion gear while using stronger plastic gears. Finally, the axle stop method I use when I use metal gear, so basically in Neo. So the final topic we're going to discuss today is backlash. If end play is defined as side-to-side movement of your axle setups in your cars, then backlash is defined as rotational movement of your crown gear around the pinion gear while the motor is held stationary. So here's what I mean by that. We'll use the gear boss because it's just going to be easier to show. You want to hold the motor in place with your index finger and thumb, flip the car over. That's just easier for me to hold that way. Hold the crown gear with your other index finger and try to rotate the gear. If you can see, there's a little bit of rotational movement of the axle. That's backlash. You want to keep that to a minimum because too much backlash, the crown gear teeth are going to whip into the pinion gear teeth and tear through them. That's not a good thing. Putting this all together, 9 times out of 10, if you get your end play right, the backlash will take care of itself. Said another way, if you have too much backlash, you probably still have too much end play and you should take care of that first. Alright, that's going to wrap up this edition of RPM's Quick Tips. I hope you liked this video, and if you did, please make sure to like and subscribe to my channel so that I can help bring more of these videos to you guys in the future. Thanks, and until next time, keep it in the slot.